I'm Ece Özdemiroğlu.
I'm Sabina Apitz.
And I'm Jill Duggan.
Welcome to Season 2 of Join the Dots. We've spent our careers giving advice on the environment and learned that choices are never straightforward, but working through the complexity is rewarding. Here in each episode, we explore the issues surrounding an everyday choice to help you decide what's best for your health, wallet, and our planet. You can find more information about this and other episodes on our website, jointhedotspodcast.com, and we'd love to hear from you on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Welcome to the first of our episodes on war and environment and Ukraine. We debated a lot whether to do an episode on Ukraine. After all, there have been wars going on all over the world all the time with grave consequences for the lives and livelihoods of people and the environment. Would talking about Ukraine now mean we didn't care about the others? Definitely not. But this one made me think, more than others, the state of the environment. And it made me realize how, even in my head, as someone who works on environmental issues day in, day out, war and environment were in separate boxes. Particularly at this time, when environment was gaining such mainstream attention, we stopped talking about it. People started to say again, not now. Important, but not a priority. And nobody is talking about the environmental damage wars cause. Or worse even, people started to saying things like, well, we won't get grain from Ukraine. We need to produce more food domestically. Food security is more important than bees and butterflies. Not realizing, or deliberately or not, forgetting that bees and butterflies equal food security. Not realizing that climate change won't pause because one country is invading another. We have a couple of episodes lined up on biological diversity and on climate change, but now we really do want to talk about what's happening in Ukraine. And I'm joined by Alla Ljungman, whom I met back in 2006 when she was studying her master's in environmental economics and policy at Imperial College. And now she's based in Washington, D.C. and is an expert on renewable energy projects and environment and social risks and impacts of such projects, working for international organizations and companies. And she's from Dnipro. Hi, Alla. I wish we could have hosted you in better circumstances, but thank you for making time for us. We are going to cover the environmental and social impacts of war as much as we can in a length of an episode, but we'll talk again in a week or so, I hope. But first of all, Alla, let's start by telling us a little bit about yourself, your journey from Ukraine, and what are you doing these days when you're not worrying crazy about your friends and relatives in Ukraine.
Hi, Ece. I'm very glad to see you, even in such circumstances. I was also debating in my mind if this is appropriate time, because everything I'm trying to do is to help my family, my friends there who are evacuating right now, who are on the front line, who are supporting civilians left in the cities under bombardments. But environment is important because that's what sustains us, sustain our life. And we need to know how significant the threat is from war actions on any territory. I come from Ukraine and I did environmental studies back in Ukraine. I graduated in 2001. I graduated with master's degree in environmental protection and worked extensively with Ukrainian enterprises on assessing environmental impacts. And I noticed that I need to have very strong arguments to move them from business as usual scenario to making our environment better and our quality of life better, and that our children can enjoy clean air, clean water, and clean produce. So that's why I choose to continue studying in Imperial College London, and that's what I did. That's where we met. Mm-hmm. You were teaching some courses to us on cost-benefit analysis, using a lot of practical examples. And after that, I moved back to Ukraine. I worked for the Ministry of Environment, a special agency which was in charge of implementing Kyoto Protocol in Ukraine. And then I moved to private companies. Then I got married and moved here to the US, where I worked for the World Bank, IFC, and other international organizations, helping to assess environmental and social impact assessment from developing renewable energy project. In 2017, my husband was posted to Ukraine, and we moved back. So I spent there wonderful 4 years. My sons were able to connect with my parents and spend quality time with them. And we moved back to DC in August 2001. So my impressions, my connection with Ukraine is very strong and fresh. And while in Ukraine, I was working on a development of the largest wind power farm. At that time, it was the largest under development, 800 megawatts, and traveled a lot to the region. Then I also worked on other projects, community development projects in eastern Ukraine, in Donetsk and Lugansk. Yeah, and I have a lot of former colleagues or current colleagues who were working in Donetsk, Lugansk, Crimea. So kind of well connected. My morning now starts at 2 o'clock, 2 a.m. DC time. So I start calling in all my friends and relatives to see where they are and how things are on their side.
Before we go deeper into the environmental issues, lots of people are trying to find ways to help in humanitarian aid. And I think if you have any favorite gatherings and charities and organizations, then we can share the link with our listeners in the show notes. So you work a lot on the energy, and I don't know whether Ukraine was a big energy exporter, but also agriculture was very big, isn't it? So obviously life is disturbed in the immediate period, but also future plans are disturbed as well. And you were telling me earlier about the agricultural season, spring approaching, although still there's some very harsh weather to come in March. Tell us a little bit about perhaps the environmental damage that you expect from the war going on.
Of course, it's hard to estimate at this time because situation changes every minute. Overnight, the largest nuclear power plant of Ukraine was attacked and caught fire, and the fire brigade was not let in. Only when Ukrainian officials started to call in to International Atomic Energy Agency and European governments, they were able somehow at least open the corridor for fire brigade so that they couldn't put down the fire.
We're talking to each other on 4th of March. We actually did wake up with the news that, is it Zaporizhzhia power station near Enerhoda in the southeast of Ukraine, it was under attack from Russian soldiers, but we've been told that the fire is under control and there isn't damage to the nuclear plant.
And actually, it started like the previous day for me. So at 10 p.m. DC time, when this news started to come in. I could watch online because there are some cameras installed at the nuclear power plant, so you can watch online what's going on.
I don't know what the word to describe that. To be able to watch from DC what's happening in a power plant in southeast Ukraine.
Like 100 kilometers away from where my parents are.
And I guess that is one reason why people are sort of paying more attention to this. I guess it's very near and nuclear impact is quite a large area. And I guess even if it's not directly targeted, there's the more activity there is around these plants, the more risk there is for an accident to happen. It's just something that we need to be aware of rather than panic. Talked about agriculture as well. There's some, obviously food is going to be difficult to get to in the short term, but also in the long term. Tell me a little bit about how you think that what's happening is going to affect that sector.
I think especially the current operations are ongoing in eastern and southern part of Ukraine, which is very agriculturally developed land. So most of the grains are grown there. So like wheat, corn, sunflower, the main production of this is there. So first, because of ongoing military operations, war, basically, this rockets that are flying over our skies will not be able to go into the field at all. And then there is information that they also spread in mines, landmines. And even if they stop right now, so it will take time to demine the area. So this will reduce the possible territory to plant these crops significantly, like billion hectares will not be cultivated this spring and they won't be planted.
For next year.
Yeah, so even if they stop right now, it's already like, it's not assessed properly, but there are a lot of information suggests that some mining rockets were fired, so before the mining operation, probably nobody will go and risk their life to plant anything there.
So there's the immediate effect that farmers can't
Yeah.
work. There's the short-term effect that even if the war stopped today, they're still going to take time to clean everything, and there might be longer-term effects actually that there's lots of planting seasons will be missed.
And many people just flee, like leaving the area. So I think there will be an issue even if some areas were not affected. There will be no one to cultivate or plant.
The people are not there, even if the mines were cleaned. So how were things environmentally in Ukraine before all this started? You talked about working on the largest wind farm, and I think about 50% of Ukraine's energy comes from nuclear power, but they were still clearly investing in renewable energy. And were there increasing awareness of environmental issues amongst the people and amongst the policymakers? How were things looking before all this?
So Ukraine has kind of very heavy heritage from Soviet period, of course. So a lot of factories, they were built like in 90s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And not much have been done to refurbish them, rehabilitate them. Yeah, so many of them were shut down because there were no demand, but still several of them were even officially bankrupt. They were still producing steel and coke, and so different production.
Heavy industry.
But Ukraine, so there is definite demand on the population side to clean that up. Civil society is very active, and since 90s, a lot of organizations are working to bring new technologies, new approaches, and Ukraine have several times confirmed their strong inspiration and inclination towards European Union, and the process to transpose the EU directives are in place since like 2004 or 5. So the government and the civil society and businesses as well, they're constantly working on bringing new technologies. In 2009, the Ukrainian government adopted feed-in tariff, and that opened era for renewable energy. So a lot of companies started to invest, and there like and open possibilities for small farmers just to install solar panels on their rooftop and get good financial benefits.
So feed-in tariffs are things for our listeners. So if you produce energy for your own use, but you got excess amounts of it, you can sell it back to the grid and you get paid for that. We had that system in the UK for a while, and loads of people put on panels on their roofs and stuff, and then the policy was stopped.
That's what happened in Ukraine, I think it's good at the beginning to boost renewable energy, but then we were a bit late with stopping the system. But so the renewable energy share and total energy mix increased by up to 6, I think, or 7%. It just like in less than 10 years.
Yes.
And before it was basically 1-2%, and the 2% were hydro, like old hydros, and they were like enormous, large hydros. So it's not like
Not very
basically
good hydros, yeah.
not very, basically they flooded the half of territory of Ukraine. I mean, not a half, but significant amount back in 60s, 70s. So this is significant increase. Also, as I said, many directives like pollution prevention control and water directives, they started to be transposed and under implementation in Ukraine. Then also Emerald Network. So first, like 2 years ago, it was mapped.
What is it?
I think it's part of Nature 2000, Natura 2000.
Okay. So protected areas.
Yeah, protected areas, yes.
So all across European Union and its sort of candidate countries that they try and create areas, not only protect the local area, but also connect so that the animals could move around and there's connection. The more connected the protected areas, the better they are, the more resilient they are, etc. So Ukraine was being part of that. It's been extended.
Yeah. And for the first time 2 years ago, this network, so they got like a layer for their land map of Ukraine. Before it was kind of different region has some information. You need to write like official letters. Where is it? What is it? Kind of. But they finally, like 2 years ago, they put boundaries. So if you plan in any activity, you can go to their land registry. Then you can just choose the layer you want to have on this map, and then you can see like if your new development violating the boundaries of that nature protective area. So really a lot have been done in practical terms to support new project, new developers, people on the ground. So it's not just some law that is somewhere in the skies, but a lot of practical things that really helped. New law in 2017 was adopted on environmental impact assessment, which is very close to environmental, like international standard environmental social impact assessment. So a lot have been done. Yeah, and for me, it's that what I was working in, the field. I have practical experience from. So it's not something in theory. It worked and made local population aware, access to information, access to environmental information became open to everyone. It's not something secret or you need to write official letters and wait for many days. Now you can just go and have this information at your fingertips. So it's huge improvement. And of course, Ukraine made commitments, carbon emissions, and it's closely followed. So there is a tax on carbon emissions and other pollutants. So Ukraine did huge progress and really people started to care about where they live, their environment, and they really the consultations I carried, public hearings for projects I was working on, I was so pleasantly impressed, to be honest. Even they ask difficult questions, even they
to you. You had to defend yourself.
Of course. Yes,
no, that's
defend,
good.
We don't want this wind farms on our land, and we're afraid of I don't know. Some of them probably listen to some TV channels from our neighboring countries. President of that country said in some interview that windmills they cause worms to crawl out of the land, of the earth. So
windmills cause worms to crawl out of
earth. Yeah, like vibration that they create. And I got this question I know where do you come from?
Yeah.
There is no study that prove that. No evidence. So of course I got a lot of difficult questions, but I was so pleased to see that people care. That's for me the most important. That people care. This is their land, and they want the best for themselves, for their kids. For the generation to come. This more strong community started to form, and they didn't want we don't care that you bring us a lot of money. the practical side changed significantly, and attitude of people changed significantly. Before, they would just ignore. Now they feel empowered. They feel empowered. They feel they can change things and they can do them better for themselves, not just waiting for someone to come and tell them like, okay, yeah, now this is a power plant. It will be staying here, like you're liking it or not.
Yes.
Right?
I think we see that a lot, actually. I mean, I've never worked in Ukraine, but we even see it in the UK and other countries I worked. There is sometimes decision makers or even experts say, oh, people don't understand. This is too complex for people, for ordinary people on the street.
That's how you want to present it, right?
That's how you want to. And I think I sometimes say to people around this table in this room, we're experts, but when we leave this room, we are the people on the street. Like, we might know a lot about this topic, but there's someone else, some other experts having a meeting somewhere else and calling me an idiot and who can't deal with complexity. And I think you're right. At some stage, knowingly or unknowingly, we are saying that because it suits us. It suits us that majority of people are not interested.
We are just arrogant and
we can tell people whatever we want to tell people and they will believe us, whereas the story that the picture that you're painting actually shows the virtuous cycle, that if you respect people, if you engage people, if you give them information, if you create trust in people, that they will engage and they will contribute. And they can make these trade-offs between having lots of money and some environmental damage, or lots of environmental damage and having less money and better environment. And better still, actually ask for options that deliver both. We can have both. In most cases, we're not just thinking about the
Especially
possibility.
If you engage in conversation and you are not afraid to have difficult questions posed by the communities, and you try to find and be honest. Some questions I can't answer right now, but if we work together, maybe we can do it together and find a solution together.
Things were changing.
Things were changing, dramatically. You ask like how situation were developing in Ukraine. And that's how I see that. It's prospering, it's changing, and people are caring.
There are lots of mass media or specialist media outlets who are talking daily and minute by minute what's happening now. It's really good to get your view on the long perspective. And I really believe there will be a social muscle memory about this, that the end of all this, you won't lose this progress. And perhaps the progress that you are defining is what we're seeing now as well, that people are organizing. People are not saying, this is happening to me, I will accept it, I will do what I can. It's a very difficult situation, but perhaps there's a lot in what you just said that explains what we've been seeing in the last week or so. And this will come back. This will not be forgotten. That progress you described will not be forgotten.
I'm very hopeful.
Yes, exactly. We will come back to this, and I'm really glad that you also want to speak again, and I'm sure our listeners will want to hear from you about your previous experiences and what transpires in the coming days. But I'd like to sort of finish this sitting with a few things that we can do as individuals. I have two co-hosts, as you know, Dr. Sabina Apitz, who also works in risk assessment, environmental impact assessment for projects mainly on sediments, and Jill Duggan, who is Director of Environmental Defence Fund Europe, and she wrote an article on this issue yesterday, and we'll put that in the show notes. And she was very interested in finding out what we can do as individuals beyond humanitarian aid. And she describes insulating your home as an act against war, because it reduces our dependency on energy, and we know it's a good thing. And she's got really lovely lines. I mean, I think it's a very good description. She says, if you're a property owner with access to your roof space, buy some rolls of mineral wool insulation and insulate your roof to a minimum of 30 centimeter. If you're a builder, train yourself in pest-proof underfloor insulation. There are millions in need of it, and a huge knowledge and skills gap to doing it well. If you're a government or policymaker, develop and mandate proper training training for tradespeople. Even if you're none of the above, you can still turn your thermostat down by 1 degree. You would be amazed by the collective impact of this simple action.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. I think, yes, this is definitely one of those times we're reminded on the power of collective action and collaboration. Hope to speak to you on better days again.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you for your support.
Thank you for listening. Thank you to the rest of the team, Neil McCune and Anna Gunn. You can find more information about this and other episodes on our website, jointhedotspodcast.com. And we'd love to hear from you on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook.